video of how to properly use a skid steer and auger attachment. You have to make sure that when you are ready to dig, you keep the auger perpendicular at all times to make sure that your holes are straight up and down.
Yeah, what you really want to do is make sure, when you're going into the ground, that you're not going too deeply into the ground. These shear pins that are put on side these augers are designed to break before the auger drive breaks, and you really want to make sure, as you can see here, that we go level with the actual ground, but not much deeper than that, because if you do, you might break that shear pin off just because of the torque required to continue digging. So you pull it right out of the ground like this while you leave it operating, and then you can stop it as you get out of the hole. We didn't do that here. We just kind of dragged the dirt back and then stopped it and then started it again, went the other way. You can drop all your dirt off. It's very simple to operate, very easy, and then if you need to go deeper, you can go back into the same hole.
It's important to know that Bobcat augers are 4-foot auger bits, and we also offer 2-foot extensions as well. So if you need to go deeper, we have that option as well.
I think what most people tend to use these augers for are fence posts, putting in decks, laying your initial lumber. But these make light work of all of it. I actually did a gate a few years ago where I dug into the ground and I had called 811. They marked everything, but they don't mark your utilities on your property. They only mark what the government owns. So if you have a utility running to your barn and then there's also a line that runs to your house, they're only going to mark it to your barn. And that's what happened on my property. And I dug into the ground and I ended up hitting my electrical line. It cost me additional $4,000. So make sure that you pay the extra money, find a contractor, or ask the utility company if they can charge you to mark your lines as well. That way, even if you call 811, sometimes you can run into an issue like that. So you don't want to get run into that, especially when you're just putting 2 posts in the ground.
We also offer up to a 36-inch diameter auger to plant trees with. So if you have a bunch of apple trees or trees that you need to plant and you need you have a larger root ball, instead of digging them by hand, give us a shout and you can plant them with an auger much faster.
And a lot of people think, I'm a homeowner, I can't rent this. Well, Upstate Equipment rents to homeowners, so you got to pay a damage waiver on top, which covers it in the event of like a massive incident or something. But it really is an affordable way to quickly accomplish a Saturday project with you and your family. Make some memories. That gate that I was talking about earlier, I did it with my 4-year-old son and my 2-year-old son and my wife. And we put in 2 posts in the ground and we just put up a cattle gate together, and it was a memory that is funny because my wife makes fun of me because I damaged my electric. But as you can see, you can get these augers on skid steers or track loaders, but you can rent them on excavators, which allows you to get those holes dug in some awkward places, maybe the side of a hill. Maybe you got to go over a fence to dig the hole because you can't fit a machine in a tight spot. Really versatile, useful machines, and they all work the exact same, where one direction digs, one direction comes back out, shakes that dirt off, and all you have to do is make sure that you're, as Andrew mentioned, straight up and down. Your forward and backwards is proper. We typically have a spotter that stands 45 degrees from the operator in clear visible line of sight, and just kind of stands off to the side. As you can see from this side profile where I'm pointing out the pins, you can see that we're straight up and down, relatively speaking, going into that hole. You don't want to dig at an angle. It's going to put unnecessary torque on the drive. Could lead to mechanical failure in the machine, but it's also not going to dig a very good hole for you.
One other thing too is if you have holes to dig in, you have width restrictions as far as getting into a backyard. We offer these on our MT style track loaders, which are only 36 inches wide, so you can literally drive this machine and auger attachment right through the gate opening with no problem to get into the backyard. So if you have any width restrictions, no problem. We have the machine and equipment to take care of that for you.
Now, a lot of people will be digging holes and they'll start to run into rocks, and when you run into rocks, it's not an issue. what you want to do is back out, get all the dirt out of the hole that is already on your auger, and then you can go back into the hole as long as it's not a rock that's more than 4 or 5 inches in diameter. This auger will actually move it out of the way, out of the hole for you, as long as you have already removed the dirt off the top of your auger. So you can go back into that hole, you can keep trying to dig through it. But if you're digging with something bigger than 4 or 5 inches, you're typically going to have to grab a shovel, clear out a little bit around it, figure out how big it is. You might have to shift your hole a little bit, or you can dig a hole next to it and then fill that in. The problem is if you're digging holes too close, in this shot here you can see we have a hole about 3 foot away. That's really as close as you want to dig because you don't want the dirt to collapse back into your other hole. So sometimes the job site does get a little bit messy if you run into a big rock or something like that. Maybe you got a 3-foot boulder you didn't know anything about. In that case, sometimes the decision might be made to go get an excavator, dig that big rock out of the ground, and then continue with your holes after you let the hard pack reset.
Well, we also offer breaker attachments as well that you could rent and run on the same machine. Very simple to change attachments out, and if you're not able to get an excavator back in there to dig that rock out, you could always use a concrete breaker to bust the rock up and then remove the pieces as well.
No doubt. So remember, call before you dig. When you're operating these guys, they're very simple, but they're very dangerous. When you're clearing that dirt off, there's been many instances of people getting caught in that auger because they don't respect the power of the piece of equipment. So you always want to stay safe first when you're operating this stuff. You want to make sure that your children are around, your family isn't around watching, and if they are watching, they're wearing high vis like I'm wearing in this video, and you want to make sure that they always have a clear line of sight to the operator, especially if you have that spotter out there. Don't ever touch it while it's operating. Don't even get near it. You want to be as far away from that as possible. Even in something as simple as a sleeve getting caught can result in extreme damage to your body, so you don't want to even play that game. The other thing I was going to mention with what a lot of people like to do is they put their hand on that auger to push dirt off. Maybe it's stuck on there or something. If you have to clean it off, don't operate it while you're cleaning it off. Just grab a shovel and get somebody to take that stuff off of there with the machine off. You don't want to take that risk.
Just make sure you are observant as to any hazards that might be around. For instance, standing water could mean extremely soft ground. Definitely do not want to dig holes in ground that's going to be unstable and could collapse, or also operating the machinery in standing water could result in having a machine get stuck and then doing either damage to the machine or resulting in a service call where we have to come and recover a vehicle or a machine that is stuck in the mud. So just make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings at all times and making sure, as Mike said before, there's no pedestrians or people around that could get injured, but also we don't want the equipment to be damaged as well. So make sure that you're observant and have a plan in place to make sure that everything operates smoothly.
And then if you have other exposed holes and you're going to be leaving the job site, you need to make sure that you mark those holes. Don't cover them with a tarp. It's a common mistake people do. They think, I want to keep water out of it. The water's going to get in there either way, whether you cover it or not. And when you cover it, that exposes people to risk of somebody walking over it not knowing there's a hole there. So always leave them uncovered and put a cone, an orange safety cone, or maybe some orange tape or some orange spray paint. Ideally something that somebody could bump into in the dark and they realize that there's danger there, assuming you're leaving the job site overnight without the holes covered. So,
and if you're not for sure whether we have the equipment for you or have the right attachment for you, please give us a shout. Any of our locations have very knowledgeable staff, and we are more than happy to speak with you and to help you figure out and determine what equipment you will need to get your task completed.